From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, tonight we are on episode 53 and we are talking about Space Brains, Surrey, that movie called Space Brains. You know
Space
that
Brains, the ones with Neil Patrick as Harris and the
That's
Russian
the one.
ballerinas? No.
Yeah, no, we are talking about a bit of a cult classic. Not so much a classic as we've been talking about, but a cult classic called Spaceballs. I was going to say brains again.
Yeah, balls
I've got the balls, I've got your balls in my hand. I've got other balls in my hand. I'm like juggling balls tonight, and I'm juggling them out in space. It's Spaceballs, 1987. So
Go and watch
it.
Yeah, it's a spoiler warning.
It is.
Nearly didn't get it.
I know.
Spoiler warning, of course. A lot of people haven't seen this film, but what you're going to find out when you go back and watch it.
Who hasn't seen this movie?
You already know a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because being one of these cult classics, it's referenced heavily by people.
Majorly.
So go back and watch it and join us again as we break it down.
We're going to break those balls down. In this episode 53, we'll reveal what we thought was good and great about the film. We're also going to go in the ins and outs of the narrative, talking a bit about some of the film language, plus a deep dive into May the Schwartz be with you. Sorry.
And I might have a little chat about the latest updates in the world of warp drives and faster than light travel. Because there's been a couple of new...
Stupendous? Is that? No.
Ludicrous.
Ludicrous, that's right. Hey, ludicrous speed. I was thinking stupendous. That was another level there, right? Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. So Space Brains, it did come out in 1987. Yeah, jeez. See, we say Space Brains so many times, I get a bit stuck. Space Balls. And my wife is always saying, "You off to do Space Balls tonight?" I couldn't even, I was going to say the other way around. And I'm always like, "No, it's Space Brains. It's Space Brains." And no, finally we are doing Space Balls. 1987. It's directed by Mel Brooks. It's also written by Mel Brooks, and Thomas Meehan and Ronnie Graham are part of the writing credits. So Spaceballs is about a hero and his trusty half-man, half-dog, Mog. I love it. No, okay, I'll come back to it. They set out to rescue a kidnapped princess from the clutches of an evil despot. Now, this film is a comedy. It's a spoof of Star Wars, Alien, Star Trek, and Planet of the Apes. Plus, the good old classic kind of hero's journeys thrown in there as a good spoof. So make sure you also check out some of those films and maybe some of the films that you and I have talked about, because it gives you so much more context, doesn't it, in the comedy of this film? It
does, and we were talking about Gora as an earlier episode, which was also...
Yeah, the Turkish film.
A similar sort of comedy spoof, but it tended to play off more recent films.
It did, totally.
Because that was done in 2000 or something, so it was covering the Matrix and Fifth Element and stuff.
Yeah.
And this here is almost, largely Star Wars, but there's Star Trek and there's a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a TV series, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called. Mm-hmm. Maybe someone in the audience can let me know, because I'm not going to even look it up, because I'm that sort of crazy guy.
Yeah.
It was with the twin women.
Oh, yeah.
That I mentioned. So this TV series, it was about a garbage ship. I'm pretty sure it was a space garbage ship. And there was these two twin women on it, and the captain of the ship, and there's like a robot dude as well. And I can't remember. No, it's not Red Dwarf.
No,
in case anyone's thinking that.
No, it's not that.
But it's from the 80s, like before 87.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember what it was called.
Yeah. Okay, well, someone out there let us know.
I remember watching it as a kid, and so there we go. And I'm pretty sure there are a couple of more references in there from that one, but
I think so.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So, Surrey, what was your number one takeaway from Spaceballs? What did you pick up from this film?
Look, what I picked up about this is not so much about in the story, but so if you're going to write a good, bad movie, you have to go all in.
Yeah.
Okay, so Spaceballs, it's a really well-made bad movie full of dad jokes and references that are so obvious.
Yeah.
You don't expect that they're actually going to do it.
Yeah.
But they do.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke jamming the radar.
Yeah.
And they literally show a jar of jam hit a radar.
Yeah.
And then they continue the joke.
Yeah. The raspberry. And there's only one person that would send me raspberry.
Would give me the raspberry. Everything is an opportunity for the worst kind of pun or reference or, jeez Louise. So much so that you're going, we're going to jam it. And you go, they wouldn't possibly. No, there's the jar.
I know, they say, like, Barth takes it so seriously. All right, jamming the radio. And he pulls down, like, the
Periscope. And that's what I took away from this movie is that you can't do a half measures. Mel Brooks knows he makes a certain style of film.
Yes, definitely.
And this film here, he just went, okay, I'm going to do a bad spoof. Mm-hmm. It's a B-grade movie, but it's a really good one.
It's a great.
Because he went all in and the whole lot never breaks character, if you like. There's no point in this film where they're trying to be a serious film.
No, and I mean, in everything you've just said then, what came to my mind is this film even breaks that fourth wall.
Several times.
You know, like, so they turn to us and they say, do you get that? Like, in terms of the plot, the like, we've got to rescue Princess Vespa, otherwise they will take all our air. Do you get that? And we have a direct look down the camera. You know, then later on, when they're fighting with the sabers, we literally, like, you know, he cuts down a crew, a crew member. I didn't do it, you did it, you know? And so, yeah, there's literally, like, the fourth wall is completely broken.
And Mel Brooks has done it in a couple of these films.
He does,
remember Blazing Saddles basically ends with it all being a film set. And I remember as a kid being completely confused because, you know, it required a bit of more mature thinking. To construct that all within the realms of the film. So I think he's mastered that in this film. A lot of people say this was not peak Mel Brooks, and he does have a couple of films which are maybe a little bit more polished in a way, but this one here it's just, I've seen plenty of really bad science fiction films, but they were trying so hard to be serious and good. Yep. But they just didn't make it, whether that be lack of funding, lack of time, lack of the actors available, and so forth. But this one here, good actors, you know, experienced comics, and enough special effects to do what they needed to do. Yeah. But, it was just a well-executed B-movie. It's fantastic.
And maybe we should just talk straight away about our sort of viewing experience of this film because of what you've just said, because I've got to say, as a kid, I watched this. I mean, 1987, I was a kid. Maybe I saw it a couple of years later, I'm not too sure. But, like, I got confused on this film versus Star Wars, as in the Star Wars universe. So, obviously, by 1987, we've already had a couple of Star Wars films out, right?
All three.
All three are already.
It was 84, I think.
Yeah. So they're already all out. However, I'm reasonably young, even when Spaceballs comes out. So maybe at around the age of 8 or 9, I'm watching Star Wars and Spaceballs all at the one time, and kind of thinking, like, Barth and Lone Star are Luke Skywalker, you know, like, and Princess Vespa is. Vespa, isn't it? That's her name. Yeah, Princess Vespa is Princess. Like I'm kind of confused on it, as in the universe. You know, like this is just some sort of extended universe because, like, there's a lot of symbolic connotation that Mel Brooks has taken on that you you go, yeah, that's not Yoda. That's not, the Lone Star is not Han Solo. But then as an 8-year-old, I'm like, yeah, this is the same world. Yeah. Like, it's not that different, is it? You know, like, as an adult, you can see the differences. But as a kid, I remember distinctly kind of being quite sucked into Spaceballs and thinking it was serious. Or thinking it was the same world and just a bit abstract. I don't know. What was your experience of this? Do you remember watching this when you were younger?
I was in year 7 or 8. So, watching on VHS.
Yeah.
It'd been out for
well,
a
I was
while.
the same, VHS or TV.
Yeah, I fully knew because I'd heard from people saying that it was a parody or it was. What did I call it back then? Because I don't think I had the terms parody or satire or spoof. No, it was like a funny take on Star Wars.
I think they used to say slapstick, didn't they?
And I watched it with that in mind. But the problem was, as a 13-year-old, I don't think I got a lot of it. Yeah. Because now that my repertoire of movies and science fiction and storytelling and imagery and even just being able to pay attention to verbal dialogue and references is a lot better.
And breaking the fourth wall, like you don't really get that. Like,
didn't confuse me now. Like, so it's quite good. And I think we are sooner or later going to ask the question about whether this was a classic or not.
Yeah, well, I thought of the question like, why, Surrey, is this not a classic?
I think it's not a classic. It almost is, but it doesn't break any new ground, and it doesn't redefine any genre or any of that. So it doesn't quite do that, but it's definitely cult. And the way I pick up on a cult movie is it's the sort of movie, the first time you watch it, it's usually, right, okay. You know, I find that cult movies, you tend to be left a little bit uncertain, maybe a bit almost flat, where you're not sure, was that really good or really bad, or was it something else, or was it just kind of a movie? Yeah, that's fair enough. Until maybe a day or two later, and someone says, "Oh, did you watch Spaceballs?" Yeah, and you go, "Yeah," and when they're going to warp speed, and it goes to ludicrous speed, and it goes to, and you start thinking about it, and you kind of start chuckling to yourself and going, "Yeah, that's actually really funny." Yeah. When you're watching it, it's kind of. And again, when I was watching this time around, you're asking about experiences, I was watching it, and I started off sort of with a bit of some of the gags. I was sort of going, "Oh, that's right. Oh, groan." And then I found myself actually laughing and anticipating when they're going to say the next stupid thing. You're like, I'm not Yoda the Amazing, whatever, yogurt. I'm just plain yogurt. Plain yogurt, yeah. And even that, it's just like, oh, that is so bad. I was chuckling on the train. I was watching this on the train, and I was grinning and laughing more than I ever did previous watching it. Yeah. And that's the way it's a good cult movie, like a comedy, because I was same with Spinal Tap. Yeah. So I watched this as Spinal Tap for the first time, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay. And then days later, I was talking to someone else about it, and we kept referencing parts of it and going, yeah. And then I watched it maybe about 3 or 4 years later, and I was nodding and smiling along with it. And I watched it a third time a few years after that. Yeah. And I wasn't laughing out loud because I rarely laugh out loud, but I was definitely,
you felt it in your loins.
I was definitely feeling my stomach contracting, my sort of breathing, suffering.
Let it out, Surrey. Let it out. Let it out.
And that's the way it is. And the same you get with like The Princess Bride. Yeah. The first time I watched that, it was kind of like, oh yeah, okay. That's kind of a fun little story. Yeah. But then you talk about it with someone else afterwards, and you realise all these parts just really stick into your head. Yeah. The Billy Crystal's Medicine Man, this is always Miracle Max, and the and Andre the Giant.
Andre carrying it, climbing up the rope. I love that.
Yeah, he's just climbing up the ropes. Oh, hurry up! He's catching. Yeah. Yes, but he's not carrying 3 people. Yeah. So and that's this movie through and through. When I was watching it now, going back, and as I said at the spoiler warning, if you haven't seen the film, you will have heard of it. You will have heard of Ludicrous
course.
Speed.
Yep.
Elon Musk is clearly a Spaceballs fan because the Tesla comes with ludicrous speed.
He could let us know if he is or not. You know, what he thinks about Spaceballs. And
there was, he had another reference in Tesla about Spaceballs. I can't remember what it is now. Oh, well, he did his merchandising. He did Tesla, the flamethrower.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't believe that he actually, like, it's not a military flamethrower. It's got like a glorified blowtorchy type
The kids
thing.
will love it.
Yeah. But it's just, you know, this is a $20,000 blowtorch and it's sold out.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk loves Spaceballs. So you will have heard of Spaceballs. Yeah. You will have,
Well, even, you know, I think, you're going to send me off on little tangents, but I think, you know, like the definition with movies of a cult classic tends to be that you get a following of the film that are very devoted to the film. And so it doesn't really matter if that's like 100 people or 10,000 people or whatever, but like a cult classic or a cult movie tends to have this diehard group of fans that are like, you know, they quote the movie, they talk about the movie, they get together and they watch the movie, right? So that's kind of like a bit of a classic definition. But I think the deeper side of quite often when we do talk about cult is what you just displayed then, Surrey, which is remembering watching this film when you were younger and also like having good times, and then even noticing like even now that you're a little bit older, you're still laughing, you're still following the jokes, you're still
laughing
going
more at Spaceballs this time than ever, just because I got more of it and I knew what I was expecting to come up, and kind of it's cringeworthy. You go, are you really going to do that? Are you chicken? What's wrong, Colonel Sanders? Chicken? And you just, you can't. But how can you possibly write that line and keep it in the movie and not just go, that is totally ridiculous?
Yeah.
You know, like, but no.
But there's, and you know, my Schwartz is bigger than your Schwartz. You know, our Schwartz are the same size. All right, let's fight. And you know, I've got one thing to tell you, Lone Star. I am your father's old friend that lived next door to him during college. You know, it's like, and their nephew's son. You know, I mean, it's like so ridiculous, but playing off that idea. But I think there's always that, it's cringeworthy factor with comedy. But with cult movies overall, I think it's like where you get together with other people and you can kind of enjoy a movie. But I think for me personally as well, it's like, does the movie keep resonating into the future? So it's like, you know, you and I watched this when we were kids and we probably thought, like for myself, I was like, is this part of Star Wars? Is this like another Star Wars movie? Like I was convinced on that. And then I probably watched it when I was a teenager with other boys at a sleepover, that kind of thing, going, haha, yeah, it's funny, it's stupid, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, you know, Barf is like, you know, Chewbacca, but he's crap, you know, like that kind of teenage humor. And then watching it like in my 20s and kind of going, it's funny, it's a bit cringeworthy, maybe it hasn't lasted. And then now coming at it, you know, later in life and going, like there's heaps of dad jokes in this movie. There's moments like Colonel Sanders where you go, oh, that's pretty bad. But then there's other moments like, I'm just blowing yogurt. You're like, that is funny. Like, that is, funny. Like, it is funny. You know, and even like the Schwartz, like, and the joke about the Jews, like, you know, the
Jewish princess.
Jewish princess. You wouldn't be able to tell. You know, like, you know, like those kind of jokes, you're like, that's pretty funny. Like, there is funny stuff in there.
It was that's a good setup there because it's the planet Druidia and it's the druids and you're okay. Yeah. Like, you know, it's obviously very, playing off some sort of ancient mythology. Yeah. It's getting a bit of mythos to it.
No, it's got the Jew joke.
But then referring to it as a Druish princess. So, you know, I didn't think she was, which Mel Brooks can't help it. Every movie he has, it's just always...
There's got to be a Jew joke in
jokes.
there.
Yeah. That's who he is.
I think he famously said something like that he is Jewish, but like he doesn't see himself so much as Jewish, but it's like, oh, I'm part of the club, you know, like that's his joke. And, you know, like it comes through in all of his stuff. So this movie in particular was one of his most expensive. The producers costing about $1 million, but making millions. This one...
Yeah, it went on to a stage show.
Yeah, it's continued to make money, not only for him, but, you know, a lot of people that invested in it. And it's obviously a great movie and a great stage show. I've seen both. I've seen all three, actually, now when I think about it. I've seen a live version, a stage show. I've seen the old movie, and I've also seen the more recent version of it, you know, with Matthew Broderick and stuff. And it's a great movie. Like, it's really great. I think it probably, the younger the audience gets, they probably lose a bit of the context of Nazis and stuff. But, you know, it's there. And you can see in Spaceballs, because Star Wars has it, you don't even have to, like, reference it in Spaceballs, but because Star Wars has it, it feels like the Nazis, right? Like, the bad guys are the Nazis.
But, of course, Spaceballs does reference it slightly where Vesper's spaceship comes up at the dock and the soldier guard fellow goes to get her, and Dark Helmet says, "No, wait, leave her to me." And he goes and stamps his foot back into place and goes, "Jawohl!" and there's that sideways look, kind of where it's like, "Hey, everyone, audience, what did he do? What was that about?"
Did you notice that?
Yeah,
look at me, Kimmy,
yeah.
look at me.
So that was the only reference that I could spot, but it was relatively subtle because I think many people may not have picked it up, but
no.
If I've watched
Jews,
Heroes
Nazis, you got to always kind of like go together, don't you?
You got to. They shouldn't go together. They should be kept well apart, but nonetheless. So then, tell me though, is this a hope, warning, or an experiment?
This is a hopeful film, Surrey. You know, we got the hero saves the day, saves the princess saves herself in a way. Good defeats evil. I think this is just pure hope.
Yeah, so the hero achieves his special destiny.
Yeah.
Which, again, is this classic setup of...
Yeah.
Where he was abandoned at a monastery. And then what did you... the monks never told... No, they took a vow of silence. Like, come on. They get it right down.
But then I have this necklace as a special thing.
Mysterious
and
necklace.
Yoget says to him, "Well, I will tell you the answer to that, but when the time is ready."
Yes, of course.
Which, like, the funny thing is, right, in this film, it's being presented in a comedy light. But, a couple of episodes ago, we talked about The Matrix. Morpheus is just as annoying, right? Like, he's saying, well, I can only show you the path, but I'm not going to tell you the truth. It's like, oh, God, just tell him what The Matrix really is. Like, it's the same here, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
It's the same concept.
There's many, many movies where it is like that.
And, Yoda, like, it's the same thing. Like, he says, Luke, you must... learn to wield the sword before the sword wields you, like...
So, what was that show where there's just a guy spoke in every one of those? That's the only way he spoke. He was like this wise, old man. And he always sort of says, he'd exactly the same things. I'd go, but I'm afraid. You must master your fear before your fear masters
Well, the Karate Kid's like that, right? Like, the Karate Kid's
everything
like
he
that,
said,
right?
and only the hero of the show kept looking at him going, "You're just saying the same thing twice reversed. Like, it's just ridiculous."
Yeah. What was your favourite scene?
Oh, jeez. Okay, my favourite scene was... Well, okay. Again, this is one of those amongst the many. But
we want one. We want one.
The first scene I came across that made me have a chuckle was the opening wedding, actually, where Vesper's walking up and they have a couple of, stops and pauses, and the organist is looking a bit pissed off about this. Yeah. And the conductor, the wedding conductor, what's that called?
The priest.
The celebrant.
The celebrant.
He sits there and says, "And so approaches the beautiful bride," and then she's off and down the running. She's running down the ramp. She's jumping in her car, and it just turns into a sports commentating. That was lovely. You
said Princess Bride. It was a bit of a similar start to the Princess Bride. Marriage.
I forgot that that scene. That's why,
me too.
So I was watching it the first time, and he just burst into this commentary as she's running on down the thing and jumping the thing, and everyone's just kind of entertained.
The robot's just holding on to her.
Joan Rivers. Well, her voice.
Her voice, yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
It was funny.
And so I'm gonna put that in there, and then off she shoots out of the shield around the planet.
So are you up to anything yourself creatively or science fiction-y or in-betweeny? What's going on in the world of Surrey?
Oh, I've been working on the new Space Brains material.
We do. We've been promising a logo for about a month now, I think.
Yeah, so that's come back from the cleaners.
It is. New website.
And there's a new website up and coming.
And some other exciting bits and
I've
bobs to do with that.
I've started editing my audiobook, so that'll be nice.
Yes. I think last time you were talking about that.
So started a writing group.
Yeah, cool.
First meeting was last week when we weren't recording.
Yep.
It was just me.
But that's okay.
That was the intention. The intention, I wanted to find a space where...
That's a good management meeting, isn't it? Well, I held a management meeting on Monday. It was just me.
It was me. 100% attendance.
100%.
Way to go. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Build it and they will come. Sorry, build it and they will come.
Yes, well, that's the thing. I needed a space. I needed to start going. And at that writing thing, I was continuing writing this screenplay because I've never written a screenplay. I thought it'd be a good challenge. Here
Awesome.
I am talking about them all the time.
Yep.
And
realise they're a bit harder than what you thought.
Well, I haven't actually got into screenplay part. I'm just writing all of the background.
Yeah.
The Bible stuff. So yeah, it's similar to writing a novel at this point.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, transferring that into scenes and so on.
You got to be lean and mean.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Interesting to have a go at. Because I did the audio script before, that took a little while for me. It took a season and a half for me to start getting into the flow of how to do that. Yeah. So if you're listening to the Exit Plan audio drama, the first season was a budget version, as I was sort of learning the ropes. I think it turned out okay.
Yeah, it was good, man.
Season 2 and 3 picked up the pace a bit, and the audio design and so forth sort of went up. I went from the first season, I think I maxed out at about 8 or 12 tracks going at for the episode up to like 37 tracks for some of the later ones. So that's all the sound effects and the backgrounds and the convos and all the rest of it. So
awesome.
So I'll see how that translates then into a script.
Yeah.
And depending on how I go now, I might actually just write a book out of it.
Is this just a totally new original idea? Not that you have to divulge the idea, but just...
this is based off my short novel.
Okay.
Hansel and Gretel.
Okay.
So I really started to get into that world, and I've enriched that a bit.
I thought you were going to make that like a teleseries thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, 3 seasons of 8 episodes is what I've decided.
Okay.
That'll work quite nicely. And it's a fairy tale style. So there's different tiles. I don't know if we've spoken about this here, but there's different, what do you call it, themes or motifs you might use for telling a story. And you can do a parable where you're using like sort of animals and objects and other things to do stuff. Or you could do it sort of a documentary style.
Yeah.
And this one here is more of a fairy tale style. So you've got the number 3, and you've got you always have like 3 lessons and 3 people and everything. So there are 3 primary characters, and there are 3 seasons, if you like, 3 parts. Okay. Which largely tell a story of each of those 3, but it all makes a whole sort of arrangement.
Okay.
And
sounds good.
And there's pulling in from Hansel and Gretel and some other grim fairy tale style of concepts involved. Nothing quite so obvious as some of the more recent fairy tale inspired TV, which like the Once Upon a Time and Grimm and I know there was another one. I just can't remember what it is, but there you go. So
I've got to say, I got the dictionary, encyclopedia, whatever you want to call it. Can't quite remember the name of the book about 10 years ago of the Grimm tales. It's like a dictionary. It's massive, 1,000 pages or something. And you start reading those original versions of Cinderella or whatever, some of that Snow White, and you're like, far out, these are nothing like the Disney version.
No,
that was like, and at the start of that book, there's a few pages just explaining the Grimm brothers, and they travelled all over Germany and they collected fables from local little towns. Some of the stories were not theirs at all. They either heard these stories and they just put them in their books. But there's no records of, this came from Surrey, for example, of this little town in Germany. The Brothers Grimm travelled, apparently, according to this book, they travelled all over Germany and kind of collated stories, plus created their own stories. But some of those classics, there's heaps and heaps of stories in this book I've got of theirs. But some of the classics that you do know, like the modern day version, like Cinderella or Snow White or whatever, it's like, wow, you read the Brothers Grimm version, you're like, ooh, it's nothing like the Disney version. It's so much bleaker.
Yeah. And my take
and darker on
this is, it's hard for me to be totally bleak. I am a naturally optimistic person.
You're nothing like me.
So it's very hard to be truly dark, but yeah.
I like the dark. Bring me the dark.
I do like mystery.
Yeah.
I think everything I like to write, and there's those two things. One of these, delving into what turns you on.
Yeah.
To stories.
Yeah.
And mine is I like mystery, what do you call it? Sort of the hinting at larger pictures. But I also then like these sort of redemption-y style stories or change, growth, coming to positivity sort of a story in various forms.
Yeah.
So I've sort of combined those two ideas here in this story has got a lot of just unexplained mythology, if you like.
Yeah. It's so good getting to the base root of what it is that tickles you, isn't it? It's really interesting. I think if you can really, as a writer, sink your teeth into what does it for you. I'm not coming up with this concept, but I've you and I have talked about this concept before. But it's as a writer, if you understand what is it that you want to do and write about, what tickles your fancy, and then trying to write then stories that tickle you, suddenly you're going down a pretty interesting pathway.
Yes, almost as interesting as Spaceballs.
It is.
So let's get back on Spaceballs now and have a bit of a brief overview of the plot, cast and crew.
Yes. So look, as we mentioned, Mel Brooks directed and written this, and we've talked about Mel Brooks producers. There's a Dracula film that he did. There's a war movie he did. And they're all comedy, spoof kind of movies. But also Thomas Meehan and Ronnie Graham were part of the script writing process of this. Let's run through some of the actors as well. Mel Brooks does play President Scroob and Yogurt. Probably almost the two best roles in the film, apart from Barf, played by John Candy. I mean, John Candy played a massive massive role in so many movies that I watched as a kid. He was really influential, and it was very sad that he died so young. Rick Moranis as well. I mean, how much is this an 80s movie? I mean, come on.
Yes.
Without Rick Moranis. And do you know that Rick Moranis doesn't act anymore? He's totally thrown in the towel. He threw in the towel in something like 2002, 2003 to raise his kids. He just stopped.
I saw the movie. They got too big.
They returned to their normal size, and he couldn't handle it. Right?
Oh, okay.
No, but he literally stopped. There was gigs for him, and he just was walked away from Hollywood. Right? And he's never returned. Which is
good on him.
I don't know about that. Sorry, I disagree.
But anyway, from the point of view of
from being a father,
he's doing his thing.
That's a different podcast. Okay, tune into our other podcast about being a dad. Bill Pullman got a bit lucky here. This is his second role, right? Yeah. And his
first major role.
Yeah, his biggest role, right? Apparently, Mel Brooks had offered this role to Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks, who both said no.
Could you imagine Tom Cruise?
I can't imagine Tom Cruise, but I could imagine Tom Hanks. Because Tom Hanks is pretty funny.
Geez, it would have been a different movie, though.
It would have been, but I don't know, because I've seen a lot of Tom Hanks. Like, he's done a lot of Saturday Night Live sketches. And when you go back to 1987, you got to remember, like, Big was like 1992. Like, there's comedies with Tom Hanks, right? Turner and Hooch and stuff.
Was it 92?
Yeah.
No, I saw that when I was in high school.
Well, it wasn't.
When was I in high school?
It was about 1992, man. Anyway, Bill Pullman.
I was in high school in 92.
Yeah, you were.
Okay,
Do the math. But like,
say.
he's gone on, Bill Pullman. And 10 years later, he's the president in Independence Day. Another movie that we need to come to at some point, sorry, for Independence Day. We will do that. Spoiler warning. I'm acting like people care what the episode that we're about to come up with. Oh no, that's funny when you think about it. And then anyway, really, we go through Daphne, who I have no idea what's happened to her because I didn't Google her. Dick Van Patten plays King Roland. He's been in a whole bunch of shit, but I would have no idea what it is. George Weiner plays Colonel Sanders. Isn't that such a great name? I mean, geez, come up, It's like saying someone's like Ronald McDonald, right? Like Captain Ronald McDonald. Michael Winslow. Now, what else has Michael Winslow been in?
Police
Academy. And Mel Brooks said he saved them about $1,000 from the sound effects that he just committed in this film.
Yeah, I noticed a few of them in there.
Yeah.
Which wasn't, you didn't see him doing them, but you could hear them and you're going, yep, that's definitely Michael
The
Winslow.
beep beep and the doo-doo is not working no more. Joan Rivers, of course, is the voice of Dot Matrix. She's not actually Dot Matrix, but she does play the voice, which is great. And John Hurt plays John Hurt for the Alien segment. Now, this film was just literally filmed in LA, California. Like, you can't get out of LA Hollywood. Good old spoof movies, they don't even try. Now, Mel Brooks did say this was his biggest budget, and it was $22 million. Compare it to The Producers, which was only about 10 years earlier or 12 years earlier or something, was a budget of $1 million. So he was a bit frightened with how big the budget was with this. However, it did make a steady profit and came in with $38 million at the box office. So he did okay at it. So I think it was, like, overall quite a big success for him in that way. Critics didn't love this movie. From what I could gather.
See, that's the whole thing with cult movies. As I said, you tend to watch it the first time and you're kind of left a bit ambivalent. I always find it's only when you get and start talking to someone else, particularly someone else who secretly liked it, like you secretly liked it.
Yeah.
And then you mention one thing and they mention, you start bouncing off each other and you suddenly realise.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's like, I watched Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh.
And I watched that the first time and people and I...
No.
We just looked at the end of it, just looked at each other and just went, I think that was a good film. And we left it and remember we were going around, we didn't have to, we were going around to a friend's place like the following weekend, and during the week, I told him, we should watch a movie or something over there. And then we started talking about Napoleon Dynamite and like quoting lines of it and we went, gee, that's such a funny film.
Yeah.
Holy crap, I enjoyed that.
Yes.
And so we took that and we watched it. And again, my friend, he had that same sort of, okay kind of expression.
I think I liked that.
But then, of course, the following week or so, we sort of mentioned things and he's like, yeah, actually, that's a really, really funny film. Like,
and look, we won't go into it because it's not science fiction, but I think Napoleon Hill is like such a great film. Like, it's good on so many levels. I liked it from day one, but probably a very comparable film is Donnie Darko, which is a little bit science fiction-y because there's
time travel
or daydreamy or, like energy in your dreams. I'm not too sure. But that is Donnie Darko. I think everything you just said's kind of more my experience with Donnie Darko when I first watched it, that you watched it and I was like, that is a good movie. But then I'm like, but is it? Yeah. Like, really? Like, not much happened. And it was even like a bit teenagey. But then like a couple of days later, I'm like, yeah, but they even commented that in the movie it's teenagey. Like, he says, like, this is what I just want to kiss you. Like, he says lines like that in the movie. And I'm also like, yeah, and the climax, it's without spoiling it, it's not very like good. Like, it's kind of a bit like the action is kind of shot. And then you're
phrases like, yeah, I'm not afraid anymore.
right. And Drew Barrymore's character.
Yeah.
And even then that weird fat guy that like is watching them. Like it was like, what the, you know, and then I've watched it. I've watched Donnie Darko a lot over the years. I've done it with my students as well. And every time you watch it, you're like, oh my God, this is like layered, like you wouldn't believe.
It's one of my,
it's
one of my wife's favorite, my wife's favorite film.
Yeah. It's such a layered film, and Patrick Swayze in that movie, yeah, he's done some good movies, right? But that is like a cameo kind of role in a way in a movie, and he just blows it apart, you know, like it's incredible.
And that's
anyway,
that's why I'm not surprised that the critics are sort of saying,
yeah, I don't think the critics like Donnie, and they don't like Spaceballs.
A bit late to the film. Well, I can't blame him. If I was being a critic watching it, I'd sort of go, it's, you know, you're not going to come in here and...
This ain't Star Wars, and it's not sort of its own thing, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of... It's a little bit late to the party. Star Wars was, you know, a few years prior. This come out sort of within moments, you know, maybe...
Yeah.
It has that feeling of being a... You know, it looks like a B movie, you know, like the costumes are kind of a little bit silly. All of the dialogue is just, as I said... cringe. Almost every other line is just the worst kind of pun or play on words, or, you know, comedic references with every now and then they have a bit of a longer setup joke.
Yep.
But that, as we said, is what makes it all work.
Yeah.
And if I was a critic at the start, you'd be kind of going, this is not A-grade material.
How can a critic like this film?
Yes.
Anyway, let's get stuck into some of the major plot points and a little bit about the film language. So this film starts with a pretty epic sound orchestra opening that's not too far off Star Wars.
Not too far.
And maybe mixed in with Indiana Jones or something, I don't know. But it's like it's a pretty epic kind of upbeat sort of music. And there's that rolling font text scroll that we get for
the
Star Wars.
Crawl,
the crawl. Yeah. And there's even like, they tell us that, you know, there's a planet and there's another planet, Spaceballs, that have stupidly used up all the air and they're going to steal their, like...
How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
How do you stupidly use up all your air?
And so they've got an opportunity with this princess, and then, like, what's great about it, but which sets the tone, I felt, was... There's two things Mel Brooks does at the start here that I think really sets the tone, is that then at the end of all that Star Wars crawling text, which is quite serious, you know, like they've stolen the air, they're going to do this, and the princess, blah, 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 right? It's like then, or after the text is disappearing, it just brings up a bit of a text saying, if you can still read this, you don't need your eyes checked, right? Like, so that sets a bit of a tone there, doesn't it? You know, like it's just telling you that the music is epic, the font is epic. It's very similar to Star Wars, but we're taking the piss. Don't take this seriously. And likewise, then it cuts to this opening shot of a spaceship, which is the same as the Star Wars opening. And this spaceship goes on and on and on. It's like,
it gets bigger and bigger,
and it just goes on. More and more detail. It's incredible, the detail of this ship, you know. And again, this whole film, when it was made, 87, they didn't go special effects as in computers and shit. This is the real stuff, right? So this is some sort of model. It's got the little fairy lights going on. And they haven't... Like, that's the thing. You could say B grade. I quite often, you know, you've been saying B grade or B grade, but I'm kind of looking at this going, wow, this is pretty impressive. Like, is not... Like, this is a model make. Like, they've gotten a model maker to make that. And even the costumes, like, even when we get into the costumes, like, the costumes are kind of deliberately funny, you know, but they're well-made costumes. You know, they're not kind of crappy costumes, you know. And, but anyway, this spaceship goes on and on and on and on and on, and it has all these different details, these different pipes and all this. And then it turns and it says, it has a bumper sticker, right? It says, "We don't break for nobody," right? Like, and as it zooms off into space, so there's like there's the whole joke there, and even with the music, it's like, dun, 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 dun,
almost Jaws-ish.
It's almost like Jaws, dun 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 dun.
And then,
it starts
and then it repeats.
Like it repeats. Like, you got to be, you know, like that's the thing. Like, I think when you're a kid and watch that, you don't kind of get that, but as an adult, you go, that is funny. Like, there's a good joke there.
Because if the song sort of, or the music track reaches its natural sort of ending, which you can hear. There's music technique which tells you how to make something sound like it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
but the spaceship's continuing on and getting bigger.
Yeah.
So the track just starts again. Yeah. Yes, that's great.
So it's a fabulous opening, and it does connect to George Lucas. And a little tidbit is that George Lucas did watch this film, and he did give Mel Brooks a round of applause. But I did think, well, you'd be a bit of a sore loser not to. It would show that if George Lucas was doing it, yeah, but you didn't get this right factually, or it would show that he's a bit of an arsehole, wouldn't it? But whereas,
the other joke, of course, was that this film has a whole yogurt. Merchandising. Yeah, merchandising. But he wasn't allowed to do any merchandise for this film because George Lucas basically said, your action figures will look too much like my action figures.
That's right. Yeah. But he did give them, and I think I could see online they talked about it, and I think it's when they escape. There's actually a little bit of footage that is from Star Wars. It was unused footage. And I'm sure, from what I can figure out, it's at the end of the film when they're all escaping from the mothership, and it's just that little bit of footage of the little module popping off into space.
Yeah, that's
so what I'm trying to say here is that George Lucas, the guys at Star Wars, whatever, they gave over that footage to these guys to use because it was never used in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So they shot it, but then they said, well, it's not good enough, whatever, and they gave it to them.
That
and to
makes
me, I
more
think
sense. I didn't know about that because it makes sense at the end there. You can tell it's the same footage.
Yeah.
Of every time the escape pod left, you see this exact.
It's just the replication,
and you can tell it's the same footage.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just a very similar.
So when
piece.
the bearded lady gets in and the bear gets in,
well, it's a circus. He's telling the circus to escape.
He says a circus, and there's literally a circus, right? It's a good payoff.
So anyway, this ship is flying in with all this stuff in the future that's going to happen. It's incredibly funny, and you're going to be amazed. And I believe we do have villainous Dark Helmet, and his compatriot, the
Colonel Sanders.
They're sitting there. They're talking about they're coming up on Oh Jesus! The Druid is coming up.
Yeah.
I've taken the opportunity to tell Dark Helmet, and Dark Helmet comes in and he says, "Well, I'll call this. I can't breathe in this thing." And of course, it's Rick Moranis in this oversized helmet, but trying to look intimidating like Darth Vader. But Rick Moranis is the opposite.
Yeah, because he's a little dude, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell Scroob. He says, I've already taken the opportunity to do that. And he's like, oh, okay. He's quite pissed off.
Yeah.
And it turns around on him and it gets out his ring and we see the Schwartz here for the first time.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, you're not going to do the thing. And he holds up his hands to his throat because Darth Vader crushes that dude.
Strangle people.
This is Mel Brooks. Shoots him in the crotch and grinds his crotch a bit. And he falls over and the guards drag him out.
And he's holding his crutch the whole time. Yes. Which then is a joke that constantly repeats that whenever he gets grumpy, they all grab their crutch, But isn't it so great, this idea of Dark Helmet, and he's got this enormous helmet on and he can't breathe and he keeps popping it down deliberately at different times, right? It's a great joke. So they kind of basically reveal their plot point literally to us by saying that they're going to, if they go to Druidia?
Yeah, Druidia.
Yeah, and take the princess, that then the king will have to give over the air of the planet and give them the codes, I think, to the planet to take all their air. So it's going to be a ransom kind of concept. And they literally turn to camera, did you get that? So there's a breaking of the fourth wall there in terms of talking to us, the audience, which again, within 10 minutes of this film, we've had the music repeat itself, which is funny. We've had the text tell us you don't need to, you won't need glasses if you can read this. We've had the on the back of the spaceship, the bumper sticker, and then now breaking the fourth wall. So I've got to say, any critic out there that gets to 10 minutes of Spaceballs and has a problem, literally Mel Brooks is winking and nudging you. You know what I mean? You can imagine him sitting next to you going, you get that this is a comedy film, don't take this seriously, So I always kind of get a little bit upset if someone has a beef over a film like this, because literally within 10 minutes you've had like 3 punchlines, you know, like Mel Brooks giving you a little nudge.
A little, or like a big slap
or a slap on the back and saying, this is a comedy, you know, don't take it too seriously.
Enjoy it.
So Scroob, who is the president, he's played by Mel Brooks, sends villainous Dark Helmet to complete this task with the big ship that's called Spaceball 1. And it's commanded by Colonel Sanders. Dark Helmet he's quite incompetent and silly, and we learn this very quickly because he doesn't know where the radar is, Mr. Radar, and he goes over Mr. Coffee, and there's a couple of jokes about that. And as Surrey said, he zaps the balls or the crutch of people that are on the other side. So they're heading off to Druidia.
Yep.
I don't think I can say that word tonight. I could say it easier today, but I can't say it tonight. Before they can arrive, of course, Vespa is having her wedding day, and she's walking down the aisle to Prince Valium, who's like, can't.
I'm assuming that's a play off the comic Prince Valiant.
Yes.
Yes.
And he's just yawning because he's on Valium, right?
Yeah, he's
he wants
boring,
to sleep,
he's
right?
sleepy.
He's bored.
And
anyway, she's
kept
walking.
making me yawn so often. Whenever he was yawning, I'm like,
I know. Anyway, she's walking down the aisle. Everyone's happy, and she then like pauses. I don't think I can marry this man, Dad. And Dad's like, "Oh, you got to marry him. He's only Prince left." And she's like, "Okay." And they take a couple more steps. No, I don't think I can marry him. You know. And everyone's like, "Ugh." You know. And I love when they do this in comedies as well, like where the people stop on these social etiquette moments. You know, because people don't do that, do they? Like you don't see a bride walk down the aisle.
Was
it
in the more serious movies, she'd just be whispering at the side of her mouth.
But they actually stop. But also it's like the joke of like a royal family. Like a royal family could stop a wedding.
Yes.
Because everyone's just like, oh, okay, is she going through it? No, she's not. You know, like we're all here for them, right? We're being paid because of them. So anyway, that's a good joke. And she's about to get married, but she bolts it out the door with Dot Matrix, who's this kind of golden female robot voiced by Joan Rivers. And she's got roller skates, so she's just behind her. And they get into this like Mercedes, pretty cool prop what they get into, isn't it? Like it's about to take off.
That was made special for this film as well.
Yeah. There's like I was thinking, geez, Elon Musk got to take note of this. It's about to take off. You don't see it take off, and then it's out in outer space. We cut to then a Winnebago.
Some rock and roll music playing.
Rock and roll music flying through space. And we come in on this like big fat dog man creature singing along, eating like a huge big bucket of
dog food.
And he gets interrupted by Lone Star, the captain, played by Bill Pullman. At the back of their Winnebago, it says, "I love your Uranus."
Uranus, yes. Funny. Always have a Uranus joke.
Yep. Anyway, they get this video call. Look, this has got to be, you know, if you ask me what's one of the best bits in this movie, I think this, right, is Pizza the Hut. Because it's so gross.
You called him Pizza the Hut. Like everyone, Pizza Jabba the Hut.
Jabba the Hut.
He's thinking Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Like, I remember as a kid, it's the obvious joke.
Yeah.
And so he did it.
Yeah.
And there's this big mountainous bubbling pizza talking with a big tongue.
Yeah.
And little beady little eyes coming out of there.
Now, I don't know if
his robot companion, who was a Max Headroom takeoff from MTV, But
I also don't know if that's Bill Murray, right? Like, it doesn't give Bill Murray any credit in this film, but it feels like that's Bill Murray. But I don't know if Bill Murray would have done that for nothing. You know what I mean?
Well, there's Dom DeLuise in the Pizza the Hut costume.
Yeah, I don't know.
Always in.
It'd be interesting if maybe I'm wrong, and maybe online you can see it. But I tried looking at it, and they don't mention that character in the credit list, and I just wonder if it's Bill Murray.
Yeah, now you say it does have that sort of feeling.
It does. I was just my intuition was saying Bill Murray.
Yeah, your science fiction intuition.
Yeah, my space brain was like throbbing over Bill Murray. Okay, but Pizza the Hut. Like, how cool is that costume? It's real, right? It's real, and it's slopping. It's slopping off, and there's pepperoni falling down the mouth.
Fell into his mouth, and the guy picks it up and takes a bite of it. It's real pepperoni.
And he says, "Oh, you're so tasty!" And he's supposed to be a robot.
Yes, he's supposed to be a robot.
But he still ate the pepperoni. But I love that. Anyway, it turns out the Lone Star owes Pizza the Hut $1 million
Starbucks.
Now, did Starbucks exist?
No, it was Spacebucks. Yeah.
Spacebucks.
Yeah, Spacebucks, yeah.
I was going to get down to a path that doesn't exist. Let's move on. Roland, who's the king, contacts Lone Star and Morg and asks them to save Vespa.
I'll do anything if you just save her.
And they say, what about $1 million Spacebucks?
Yeah, and then he tries to negotiate, of course. Having just said that he would do anything, and they confirmed anything. How about $1 million? Well, well, I guess, you're breaking up a little bit here.
Yeah.
And so he says, yes, okay, anything, $1 million. Oh, and that way... No, and that white Mercedes, just you bring that back.
Bring that back. Try to save the Mercedes.
Yeah, I got it from my cousin who's a dealer. He got me a great... I don't know.
They did a couple of those jokes, like he says it in that line, and there's another line in it where he says that my dealer is the best deal in the universe and the valley, like meaning the valley is in LA.
Yes.
And like they did a couple of, he's the best guy in the valley and the universe, like again, breaking that wall down. So Lone Star reaches Vespa, and they save her.
Yeah, from the tractor beam.
This is where Barth jams the signal with a literal jam jar.
And we see Michael Winslow doing his little bit. And Dark Helmet says, I can't believe... The only one person who would give me the raspberry would be...
Lone Star.
Lone Star.
So they rescue both her and Dot and then escape. Spaceball 1, the ship, follows them. They go into hyperactive...
They engage hyperactive. Get the hyperdrive ready. The hyperdrive is ready. Go hyperactive.
Go hyperactive. And so it's pretty much what we expect. It's like light speed flashing. And Spaceball 1, Dark Helmet says, we need to catch them. Can we go, light speed? And he says, go ludicrous speed. And no one's ever gone ludicrous speed before.
Too dangerous.
Too dangerous.
I don't care.
I don't care. Do it. Just do it. Well, put on your seatbelt. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah, seatbelt, schmeatbelt, and so they engage ludicrous speed, and instantly, Dark Helmet's like dangling, hanging on for dear life as his legs fly up and everything starts flying back to the end of the passage, and the stars go streaking.
Yeah.
And then... They change colours as they go faster and faster. They reach ludicrous speed. And then they enter plaid as these stars sort of start doing this formation. And this plaid spaceship goes past.
It's great 80s special effects, isn't it? Like it reminded me of playing arcade computer games, it was very neutral. And they go, what are they? They've overshot us by a week and a half.
Yeah, by next week. So they pull out, but they're out of fuel, and they've got to land. So they land on a desert planet, and
the desert moon of Vega.
And you can only bring what you absolutely need to survive. Yeah, they have a bit of a confrontation.
Hey, and because Tanya and my wife and I watched this together last night. Like, we talked about that luggage, like that luggage kit that she had.
Yeah.
How 80s was that luggage kit? Like, it's like a trunk, it's a suit.
Carpet bag
thing, and then there's a couple of, like handbags and a smaller bag. Like, it was the kind of thing people won on The Price is Right.
Yes.
And also it was all like flower arrangement, and you lugged it. Like, what... At what point in the 80s was that the be-all and end-all of, like, a luggage? Like, everyone had a matching luggage kit, right?
Yes.
Like, it's like ludicrous luggage kit. It's crazy, eh?
Yes. I mean, luggage now is a little bit more...
It's so much more practical now. Like, no one
has wheels on it always.
Yeah.
Like, so they're lugging through and
it creates a joke, but I just wanted to make that as a little note.
They finally find it's too heavy, so they open up. There's this huge, super hot hairdryer, and they're in the middle of a desert. Yeah, of course.
So very 80s, hairdryer.
Vespa says, I can't live without it.
So you carry it.
They continue on into the blazing sun until they're finally like all gasping for water, and Bartha's got his big tongue hanging out, and the droid comes past, says oil, and then the princess comes past and says room service, because she's so out of touch with reality.
And then the men are carrying the women, and like Bartha's saying, I can't go on, I can't do any more. And he's like, one more June. Oh, you said that 3 Junes ago. And there's just like, no, I can't. And collapses, and then he really collapses with a thud. I really wonder if that was one of those moments of like good acting where he just collapsed as a thud and really hurt himself.
Yeah.
Because there was Bill Pullman really did like go thud into the earth. And of course, then we have these little creepy creatures come along in the little
ding, 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 ding.
Which there's a guy that's one of these dudes. I don't know his name. One of the actors. He's in Bad Santa and Santa Claus later on. So he's still been acting. Doesn't look any different to me. Like looks the same age. Like it's amazing as an age. But it's like wow. Like would this be politically correct these days?
Ding, ding. What I really like is the fact that it was clearly, they didn't even bother making up a language of these Jawa creatures or Ewok. That's what they were sort of going for.
They were, yeah.
It was just dink, 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 and then the dink, 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 dink,
And this is one of those moments that I remember being confused as a kid because they're basically identical to the creatures in Star Wars 1 that attack Luke when he's gone off and Obi-Wan Kenobi saves him, right? Yeah. But in this film, they're good guys. So I'm just going to say, like, from a kid point of view, when I was thinking it was all the one universe, I was confused. I was very confused. Because here they're helpful.
Yes, here they're helpful.
Here they're connected to yogurt. Yeah. In Star Wars, they've got nothing to do with Yoda. Yeah. I'm confused. I'm very confused.
Yes. Well, then we get, of course, the Dark Helmet having to report in to Scroob. And Scroob goes through his beam me up and teleports through and he's backwards and he says, oh, why is my bum so big? And he gets beamed back the right way.
There's the room
he says, no,
right
stuff it. I'm walking it.
Yeah, it's right next door.
Just through the door.
But mind you, people would do that. I mean, how lazy are people anyway? Technology.
If I had a teleporter in this our studio here, that teleported me back into my.
Say goodnight to your children. Can I teleport there? Yes. Okay, I would.
Yeah, off we go. So he tells him comb the desert.
Yeah, comb the desert.
And when I heard that, of course, you hear that and you go, having watched the movie up to this point, you just go, oh God, no. Yes.
They've just got large combs.
Gigantic combs dragging them on the desert.
And this is a great 80s moment. You don't hear this in films. This film has 2 lines of dialogue that just make it so 80s. And this moment is you've got one lot of soldiers combing and they say, have you found anything? They go, no, sir. And they go, what about you, Platoon 2? And they're like combing. They go, no, sir. And he goes, what about Platoon 3? Have you found anything? And he goes, we ain't found shit.
We ain't found shit.
And because there's another line later where Barth goes, holy shit. Like when Vesper like just mows down a whole bunch of soldiers. And yeah, you just don't get that in modern day dialogue. No, you don't get that holy shit factor.
I love also Dark Helmet is wearing his pith helmet, his safari helmet.
Safari.
So it's exactly the same as his Dark Helmet, but it looks like one of those great white hunter, 1800s.
Sort of has a weird British smile on it, like it does.
Yeah, British hunter's helmet or whatever the hell they are. I don't know.
But it's a good joke, isn't it? Because in Star Wars, they do change terrain and they suddenly have these different uniforms, right?
Yes.
And then so in here, it's like so abstract that Dark Helmet is like, he's the one that's changed. The others haven't really changed.
No, they're all still wearing the same.
Yeah.
And he's just got into his different...
He's got his 18th century English hunter.
I'm hunting costume.
Explorer costume. Yeah,
oh, goodness knows. I don't know what that's called. Pith helmet and khakis or something.
So they go on and they
find yogurt.
That's right. They find yogurt because that's where the dinks take them.
And we get
It just sounds awful saying dinks, but they take them there. There's this great big yogurt statue.
Wizard of Oz deal.
Yeah, it is very Wizard of Oz.
Blast of fire and puffing of smoke out the ears. And then Mel Brooks, he's just on his knees.
He's on his knees.
With his shoes on. It's like that's just like that's an old. I don't know what era joke that's from, but that's an old prop joke. There's a bit of prop humor in this.
Well, it's
in general.
It's like 1930s, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
1930s, 40s comedy. Really.
Yeah,
like I'm just going to go on my knees.
Yeah,
it's
he
highly
just shuffles out on his knees and then does his little bits and pieces.
Talking about merchandise.
Yeah, what do I do here? Merchandise.
Merchandise. It's all about the merchandise.
Yeah, he's just like Spaceballs the lunchbox, Spaceballs the cereal, Spaceballs the t-shirt, Spaceballs the flamethrower. The kids really love that one.
Kids love that flamethrower.
Yeah, and this is where he gets his medallion, and then he goes, oh, you can read it. No, sorry, I was just clearing my throat. Which is again, that's a sort of a throwback to the rabbi reading the old scriptures. If you've ever seen these mysterious spiritual movies where they have some old rabbi talking about the spirits of something or other. They speak in the old
tongue,
Yiddish or Hebrew or whatever it is, which tends to be a bit guttural in ways.
So we kind of go from that world to Helmet combing, and they haven't found anything, but then they discover Yogurt's lair, and so he decides to lure out Vespa. So it's night time, and he pretends to be Roland, and it succeeds. She comes out going, "Daddy, Daddy, what's wrong, Daddy?" And he captures her and takes off to planet Spaceball.
And we forgot one of the great bits where they're watching their own video of the movie.
We did.
Yes,
that was
the movie's come out before we finished filming, and so they're watching the film and they fast forward past.
That's right.
The funny bits.
That's how they found them.
And then they stop and see the part of the film where they're watching themselves watching the film.
Yeah.
And that's just again that's a bit of a comedy about the fact that the movie, the story of the telling of the movie and the art of the movie is not important.
No.
They're going to get it out as fast as they can. They get the merchandising out as fast as they
how
can.
do we find them? Why don't we just watch the movie? What do you mean? The Spaceballs movie. But that hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, we're in the middle of filming it.
No, but there's new technology.
Yes. Yes,
anyway, and they take off and they force Roland to give them the code to that shield, which means they can get access to the
and what's the code?
The code.
Do you
from
remember it? Because it's hard.
1, 2,
2,
3, 4, 5.
But that's a sort of combination an idiot would put on his luggage.
And then President Screw comes in and goes, "What's the code? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, he's an idiot. That's what I've got on my luggage. I have to change my luggage.
Yes.
It's a good joke, that one. Helmet and Sanduz take Spaceball 1 to Druidia. Lone Star and Bath decide to rescue Vespa and Dot from the prison. When they go there, a big shootout happens, and they are captured on the way out. But it is their stunt doubles. That is such a great moment in the plot, isn't it? It's like, you've captured them. We're done. And they go, "No, you idiots, you've captured their stunt doubles." And
that guy was doing the gloating, evil commander so well.
Yeah, I know.
So, you thought you could just come in here and escape. Now turn around so I can see you. Yo, you idiots, you got the stunt doubles.
Anyway, they're fleeing out to the spaceship. When they arrive at Druidia, Spaceball 1 transforms into this Mega Mage. She's a transformer.
Yes. And there's a big slow transformation process.
Yeah, there is. It goes on, and she's kind of like a Statue of Liberty.
Yes,
but
Statue of Liberty,
kind of robotic maid with a big
yes.
vacuum cleaner. And the vacuum cleaner is activated.
Set her to suck.
And begins to suck. And this is a really cool effect that, again, is lost these days because of, computer special effects. But they literally, snow and ice come off a mountain. The trees get sucked up. And it's all props. It's all, little tiny things that they're playing with. But it looks really cool. I really like it.
It's very, the mountain one particularly looks very good.
And so once, when the vacuum is almost full, that's when Lone Star and that rock up, and they kind of go, well, we've got to, attempt some sort of plan to destroy this and get the air back. And so they decide that, we can enter the maid and do it, but before that we need to, reset the system. And that's where Barf says to Lone Star, well, use the Schwartz. And so he does and manages to turn it from suck to blow.
Oh my God, Mega May's gone from suck to blow.
Because the other thing was when it was suck, the Dark Helmet, they were like, suck, suck, suck. Which is quite funny. So once the air is returned, Roland and that's Roland like, I can breathe again, The group then enter Mega Maid in through the ear hole.
Flying to the ear. And they're flying through, it's
a cavity thing.
Flying through the channel in the Death
Star Wars,
And they're flying through and says, well, we just got to find it out of nowhere. And you get this.
You've got to find the self-destruct,
the self-destruct mechanism should be somewhere in the brain region. And you're like, what? Why would you say that? What makes you? Where did you get that information from? But how many movies have you watched where you don't even notice the fact that they just come up with this information and they work off it as if it's the truth?
Yeah.
And it's just someone says, well, I suppose it must be kind of like this.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it turns out that's exactly what it is like.
That's exactly what it's like.
Okay, that's
there must be a self-destruct button in the ear. Okay, there must be. Let's go to the ear.
But sure enough, there is.
There is.
He uses his Schwartz or his Vulcan nerve pinch, which he got too high and it's adjusted down low, and then
he wants to break in there. He gets into the room.
Uses the Schwartz to grab the shaving cream, and the guy turns and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" What? I don't understand the whole shaving cream. Sprays it in his eyes and his mouth. And he goes, and falls over backwards. But
the Dark Helmet rocks up.
Dark Helmet gets there before he can activate the self-destruct.
And it's my Schwartz is as big as yours. Sorry,
Schwartz off. They have this lightsaber duel, which is just the same movements over and over again. But I was watching.
They take out a crew member.
I was watching that, noticing they're just going, up the top, down the bottom, and I thought it actually looks fine. Like for all of these modern action films with these fancy pants Matrix style, combat and choreography, that actually looks fine.
Looks fine, yeah.
Like, yeah, they're sort of just going doing the same sort of two movements. And the camera was just moving around a fair bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, geez, a lot of films could save a lot on choreography if they just did something like that.
They're really cool.
And they kill a crew member.
Yeah, they kill a crew member, take out some, materials in the room, and
just as Dark Helmet is about to, he knocks the ring off.
He says about the father. He says about the father rule.
He grabs the shaving mirror. Which we know he had because the guy was shaving because of the shaving cream.
Yeah.
And reflects it back into, Dark Helmet's nuts. And knocks him back and
zapped.
Bangs the self-destruct.
Self-destruct button is zapped by his big helmet.
Yeah, which for some reason they've got a self-destruct button there which is irreversible.
So they flee. He flees.
He flees. Everyone flees. And then there's Colonel Sanders is calling for evacuation. Everyone go as soon as
the circus.
So to the petting zoo, leave the circus, get out of here. The school, and sure enough, the mimes and the tumblers and the jugglers and the acrobats, the bearded lady, and the bear, they're all taken, and there's not enough escape pods. Yeah. And finally, it's just Scroob and Sanders and Dark Helmet left there, and they go, "You 20 seconds to self-destruct. Your last chance to press the cancel button." What the hell, cancel it? And they open it up and it's just out of order. It says, even in the future, nothing works. Yes. I know.
And she also counts to doesn't she go
8,
6, and they go, what about 7? Oh, I was only joking.
7, 6.
And once, so they...
Mega Maid explodes.
Mega Maid explodes.
The head goes flying off into the distance.
Lone Star and that just get out in time.
And then it's the wedding. The Lone Star leaves, and Vesper's going to have the wedding.
Vesper's back marrying Valium.
Prince Valium is there.
And she's saying, I can't believe Lone Star just left.
With $1 million.
Yeah, it's bullshit. And then we cut to Lone Star and Barf coming across this diner out in the middle
the
of the
Millennium Falcon is parked at the diner along with all of the Winnebagos and
they go in, and it's kind of this saucy, sexy diner place. It's a bit weird, actually. And Barf orders the special, and then his tail is going up someone's, one of the other girls' skirts and stuff. So it's a weird scene. That I found that scene a bit weird. Then all of a sudden, John Hurt, and you notice, like, because we've seen Alien a lot, but because we've also analysed it here, it's like they're all like eating and they're talking, and it's the exact same sort of scene. And
same
even the woman is like looks like Sigourney Weaver, right?
Yeah.
And then John Hurt starts like,
This is great. And the
alien pops out, yeah.
And then he looks at me and goes, "Oh no, not again."
Yeah.
Which, when you go, "Oh yeah," because he was an alien. But if you actually think about in the film, this guy's had this happen before. Yeah. What's the line? Is, "Oh no, not again."
I know.
It's just burst in his. How many times has this burst out of your stomach exactly?
And Barb's like, "Did he have the special? I don't want cancel my order."
Hello, my darling. Hello,
and then
my
he
baby.
starts.
Hello,
The alien does a weird dance routine thing. Anyway, so he dances along, and that's what happened. And then at the same time, we cut back to Vesper, who's basically saying, "I don't want to get married." And her father's going, "That's the only prince left. There's nothing to choose from."
Oh, and the celebrant's getting a bit testy.
Celebrant's annoyed.
It keeps pausing this wedding. And
anyway, Lone Star hops back into the, because they didn't eat. They hop back into their Winnebago, and they learn that the debt to the pizza, the hut, has been nullified because he's died. Yes. He had to eat him.
Yeah, he got trapped in his limo and ate himself.
And anyway, he also learns that through the cookie that Yogurt had given him earlier, Barf opens it, and it's a little message that says, "Oh, the thing around your neck actually does say that you are a prince," basically.
Yes, you're a certified prince.
Yeah, you're a certified prince, so that means you can marry Princess
It didn't explain where or...
Didn't explain anything. He's like, "I'm a prince." So when Vesper's then about to get married to Prince Valium, he rocks in.
Wearing his white prince's outfit.
Wearing a special outfit. And says, "Well, I am a prince, you can marry me." And so they basically do. They run off together.
They get married.
And that's the end of Spaceballs. Or is it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a sequel coming up for that one.
They wanted to make a sequel.
Yeah, it was mentioned in Yogurt says... I'm sure I'll see you on Spaceballs 2 to search for more money.
That's right. No, but they did many, many years later. I think MGM, who produced this film in around 2000, I think what I read was they were very keen. Mel Brooks was talking to them. They had conversations, but then it just kind of never went any further. So, what about your preference? This is a regular film, Surrey, on our regular ladder. Where should someone watch it? If they look at our list and they start at number 1 and they kind of go through the list, where does Spaceballs fit into your list? What's the order?
I've got it number 18 there, between Gantz, Zero, and Surrogates.
Okay, excellent.
So you've gone Paul, you've got that sort of comedy.
Yep.
Then you go on Gantz, which is not comedy, but it's quite peculiar.
Yep.
And then you're just going to line that up again with a bit of Spaceballs before Surrogates, which kind of be serious again.
Yep.
And we move on down. You're not going to get any real comedy until you hit Gora.
Yeah.
For the next one down there. But I think you need a bit of a palate cleanse between Spaceballs and Gora, because they're similar in the way they treat many things.
Yes.
But you've got a few things there. You've got The Thing, you've got Prospect, and that's going to keep you, on your toes.
Yeah, totally fair enough. For me, it's almost like right in the middle of our list or my order. So above it, I've got Replicas. Below it, I've got Darkest Dawn. The way I positioned Spaceballs was more thinking that what I said earlier tonight or early on this episode was that you need a bit of context. So if you're coming in and you're not a major science fiction person, or you are, but you follow through and you watch my first 19 suggestions and you get up to Replicas, then it's time for Spaceballs. Yes, so that's what why I positioned it in there. I mean, ultimately, I only watched Star Wars again not that long ago, about 6 months ago, with my two sons. And it was the first time they have ever seen it. And I think ultimately you probably need to watch Star Wars as well, and we haven't done that yet. But because if you just watch it, you kind of laugh at how closely it's connected to Star Wars. But I just kind of chucked it right in the middle, not so much kind of comparing it to Replicas or The Darkest Dawn, but just kind of if you sat down with my list and watched 1 to 20, then you get to Spaceballs, it kind of makes sense to now bring it in.
Yeah, well, and that's it's not. It's about middle for me as well.
Yeah.
There, it's 18 instead of number 20.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
It's sort of right in the middle. It's a solid base.
It's definitely
to
got
work
still
off.
enough. You know, like we talked about The Princess Bride as a good example, comparable 80s movie. Like, it pretty much is The Princess Bride, this movie, in a way, but it's just in space instead of like fairy tales, right? Like, it's fairy tales in space, which people have said Star Wars is like fairy tales in space. It pretty much is. Like, it pretty much is a fairy tale in space. And that's what Spaceballs is also like. So, yeah, but it's good to have a bit of connotation to some of those other movies. You know, there is the connection to Planet of the Apes, there is a connection to The Wizard of Oz, there is a connection to Alien, there is a connection to Star Wars, you know, all through. And really also Indiana Jones in a way, hey? Like, Lone Star is kind of Indiana Jones in a context. Like, he's a version of it.
When they ask where he's from, for the monastery in the Ford Galaxy, I felt... I couldn't help find it. So it's, first of all, it's
Harrison
a car.
Ford, yeah.
It's a car joke.
Yeah.
But it's also Harrison Ford,
yeah.
because he's playing the Han Solo type guy. Yeah. That was a joke that definitely as a kid, I didn't even know that was a joke.
No, neither did I.
From the Ford Galaxy. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
13-year-old Surrey is kind of like, okay. He's just giving information. But there's no sentence in this that is just giving you information.
No, that's right. So there's a good another layer there, isn't
it's
there?
It's either a setup or it's a punchline. Yeah. It's one or the other.
So yeah, definitely. There's those multi-layers, and you find that in these Mel Brooks movies, I think, is there's some good layering going on in the comedy. So what about, is there any layering of science in this film?
I'm
Sorry.
layer on. Previously, I've spoken about Faster Than Light Travel, because Faster Than Light Travel, ludicrous speed, it's wonderful. Now, cast your mind back to this thing called the Alcubierre drive.
Oh, right, yeah.
So this was it's not a drive, it's a solution to a mathematical formula. Einstein, he came up with this thing, special relativity, which is an equation, basically, which says for a given arrangement of space and energy, then you have an arrangement of space-time,
right,
and energy.
Yeah,
right. So on one side,
sense to me.
So if you want to have on one side of the equation, you want to set up a situation where you have a warped area of space-time, and the reason you want to do that is because general relativity says you cannot accelerate up to and beyond space speed, light speed.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't have anything faster than the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't accelerate up to and beyond it.
Right. Yeah.
And the fastest thing we know of is photons. But that's not to say that there's not the ability to move faster than light.
Yeah.
It's just that, well, as we'll see, this fellow Miguel Alcubierre in Brazil, he says, well, let's grab this equation, which it's a two-sided, it's got an equal sign in the middle and two bits on either side. One side, you go, well, I want a bit of space-time where in the middle it's flat without gradient. So if you're in that middle part, you can just move around like normal.
Yeah.
But let's say at the front of this, we have it all scrunched up really tight, and at the back we have it go out really wide.
Okay.
So you've got like a bubble of normal space-time surrounded by like all scrunched up space-time and spread out the back.
Okay. Yep.
So imagine a
I can follow
teardrop
that.
shape type of thing.
Yeah.
That
a balloon.
That bubble there would mean that the people inside that bubble, they're not travelling faster than the speed of light in relation to anything within their frame of reference.
Okay.
Because they're in this little bubble. Space-time around them is shifting. So the question is, what arrangement of matter and energy, because remember, matter and energy are basically the same thing. Matter and energy are what cause curvature and fluctuation of space-time. So like a black hole, for example, is a massive mass with huge energy, and it warps space-time down to a point where all sorts of weird shit happens.
Yeah.
So what arrangement of mass and energy would you need to form this bubble so that you could have people inside of it, and in theory this would be able to then travel, would not be restricted by this problem because you're not accelerating the people up to and beyond the speed of light.
Yeah.
You're shifting space-time around them faster than the speed of light. But their own internal frame of reference is not going faster. Hence the whole term warp. You've basically warped space-time around them so that they're traveling in an isolated bubble.
Okay.
As far as I can tell from what they say. I think it's highly mathematical and theoretical.
Yeah.
The only problem with the Alcubierre warp is what you need then is a whole bunch of matter, and that's fine. We've got plenty of matter. Yeah. But you need this stuff called negative energy. So when you figure out, you go, I want this arrangement, and you put it in one side of the equation, it tells you what your energies are. You need another side, and it's massively negative energy.
Right.
We don't know what that means. Like, that's what's referred to as exotic matter, which is to say, it's someone that doesn't really, as far as we know, it doesn't exist, and we have no way of creating it.
Yeah, right.
But in theory, that satisfies the mathematical requirements. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah. The next thing came along and says, but that's not physical. So how do we make this so that we have a physical representation, not just kind of this mathematical, hypothetical situation? Right. So there's other guys came along. Who were they? I've got to get their names because I always like to have these names. Here he is.
Names are good.
Alexei Bobrick and Gianni Martir.
Of course.
In September 2020. So
experts in the field.
Relatively recently. Yeah. They came up with this paper here, which is their abstract reads as follows, because I'll just mangle it otherwise. So the Alcubierre warp drive is an exotic solution to general relativity. It allows for superliminal, as in faster than light travel, at the cost of enormous amounts of matter with negative mass density. For this reason, the Alcubierre warp drive has been widely considered unphysical. In this study, we develop a model of a general warp drive space-time in classical relativity that encloses all existing warp drive definitions and allows for new metrics without the most serious issue present in the Alcubierre solution. We present the first general model for subliminal positive energy spherically symmetric warp drives. Short version is they sort of, and there's what follows is a number of pages of discussion, references to other things, some diagrams, and mathematic notation of which I am unfamiliar.
Well, it explains that, sorry.
But the point of what they're getting across here is they started playing in different numbers because, as I said, it's all just mathematics. So they started playing in different numbers and different telemetries into a computer until they managed to find a way so you don't need this negative energy. But this is slower than light speed. So this is what you would need to construct a bubble.
Right.
And it's saying this is actually physical. This is real stuff.
Let's build the bubble.
It's still kind of nonsense make-believe. However, there's this fellow, Eric Lentz. He's of the...
Why can't these guys get funding to build the bubble? But that's my question. Because I love the maths, right? Like, I'm into the maths. It gets my juices flowing. But why can't someone like Elon Musk give him some money to build the bubble? Build the bubble.
Oh, well, see, it's wonderful here because so Eric Lentz, he wrote this paper and he said, okay, so let's find a way of taking this physical manifestation and let's work out what we're going to need in order to do it. And so he came up with this idea of this sort of, you could change the that model to use these sort of standing waves. He changed sort of the geometry a little bit more. Yeah. Again, this doesn't require any
bubble.
This is all real stuff you could do. Yeah. You could get a bubble that wraps a 656-foot wide spacecraft. So that's sort of big.
Jeez, that's huge. Yeah.
Traveling at the speed of light, it would require only roughly 100 times the energy contained in the mass of Jupiter, which...
okay, that sounds like
so you'd have to
lot.
Get 100 Jupiters and convert their matter into energy.
That's a shitload of energy.
It is, but at the same time, it's a real amount of energy.
Yeah, that's true.
Previous calculations have required basically all the energy in the galaxy.
Yeah.
And this here is just three.
But why can't they? Why can't this dude compute it to like nuclear energy or something? You know what I mean? Like so we could go. He could be like, oh, it would be the energy of 10 nuclear bombs. You know what I mean? And you go, okay,
the number of Hiroshima bombs.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Like, why can't he put it on Earth terms? Come on.
Well, it's interesting because we're talking about 100 of these.
What is the energy of Jupiter about? Like, what the hell is that?
Well,
like, I don't know what
it's about 30 orders of magnitude higher than the power of a modern nuclear reactor. So
yeah, this is what I'm saying. So why can't he just talk in like layman's terms?
Previous calculations have allowed for energy efficiency gains of about 60 orders of magnitude. So what he's saying here is he's got this base point, get some more brains in here, and the previous, I remember the original Alcubierre required all the galaxy, the entire galaxy converted to energy, and then they found some efficiency gains in the way you shape stuff and just sort of to bring it down just the amount of energy in our solar system.
Right.
Okay, that's still wildly impossible.
Yeah.
But so what he's saying is that we can do the same sort of thing. We could bring it down to, nuclear fission reactor size quantities.
I think this is where they're going wrong. This is why no one's giving them the money for the bubble, because they're not speaking really in terms that we can understand, right? Like you go to a businessman and you say, "Oh, we need 100 Jupiters." They're like, "Like, how do I do that?"
Yeah.
But if you turn around and
how
say,
many Jupiters can I get for $100?
If you turned around and said, we need 10 million solar panels, like I'm just saying as an exact, as an abstract number to create the energy to rocket this, you'd be like, okay, well, a solar panel costs this much. That would cost trillions of dollars. Okay, we can't afford that,
Well, this is what Eric Lenz is saying. He's saying, like, okay, so here's some maths which shows we've gone through a couple of generations of this warp drive, and this is what excites me so much is we're moving further from fiction and closer to reality, because if we can solve these equations with amounts of energy that, as you say, come down to the realms of 100 Jupiters is outrageous, but if it was down to something like converting the mass of the moon, you're starting to go, okay, well, there's still a science fiction sort of technology, but if we could come up with a way of doing that, not our moon, but we've certainly got asteroid belts and stuff. We're starting to see.
That's right.
Maybe not humans, but you're starting to think, well, maybe actually aliens could be flying about the place.
Yeah.
Because
they are.
One of the shapes that Eric Lenz points out as being the most effective is not, in fact, passengers sitting one behind each other like a train.
Yeah. But
sitting around in a big disc, flying the flat face first.
Right.
Because you want a big flat face with a slim, a shallow body. So instead of an airplane flying nose first, it's flying flat first, if you like.
Yeah.
In that way.
That's cool.
Which, if you think about flying saucers, they're often described as they're not flying like sideways, like an airplane. They tend to go up and down, like
He's thinking on those lines,
entirely, and it's the sort of science that really excites me, because in my lifetime we're not going to see this happen.
No, but I mean, like if
they keep refining it.
Yeah, and I know this is not the same thing you're talking about in terms of the actual technology, but I saw I don't know the name of it, but again, going back to Musk, they landed it the other day safely, and I know there's been a few explosions, but the way, I don't know if you've seen the video, but it comes in, instead of landing like a plane, it comes in bottom first and then tilts and lands like that.
No, I haven't seen that one. I've seen the SpaceX Falcon 9
it's not the space. It's not the space.
No,
it's not. This is what was it called?
That's Starship.
Starship. Yeah, and I mean everyone's like, yeah, because it landed safely this time instead of exploding or whatever. And but it's like, wow, that is landing very, like Hollywood style. You know what I mean? Like it's not landing the way we expect things to land.
It's landing like a computer lands.
Yeah.
Because a computer would just go, okay, well, we just need, the simplest thing to do would be to apply thrust along the longest axis, so we have the least amount of maneuvering we have to do until the last minute, and then we'll change it into the broadest platform to spread distribute the force out over the largest area, so we can land it.
Yeah, it kind of rotates at that last whatever, a couple of 100 meters up in the sky, it just suddenly goes flat and then lands, whereas we're used to an aeroplane kind of coming in and landing on its feet or whatever. So, I mean, it's not to do with what you were actually talking about, but just that final step of science fiction becoming reality, I suppose.
Yeah, I love it. I was somewhat similar, related to that same sort of thing. As I was watching the latest this robot dog thing. They always have this thing with wheels. Instead, they're going, well, we've been focusing on having
legs.
Feet, so it's got walking, and it still have the legs, but it's got like wheels on the end of its legs, which it can then individually rotate, so it can hold them steady and use them like feet, or let them roll a bit, which they said was really good because it means that if it puts its foot down where it's unstable, like it has the wheel solid like a foot, but it's a bit unstable, it can let it roll a little bit into a more stable position rather than having to pick the foot up again, move it and put it back down again, which is what you have to do. And that's a very computerized concept because humans, we don't have rollable feet bits. And so you're watching this robot move, and the way it moves, it doesn't look like any depiction in science fiction because the depictions in science fiction are humans trying to make a robot move. Yeah. This is the way a computer does it, which is all, like you said, it's like that spacecraft landing and you're introducing these sorts of things, the warp drive having like a big flat space, because the computer would be modeling all this and say, okay, we need this, it needs to be this shape. This is the most energy efficient way of doing it. That's right. This is how much space we can have, here's how it has to move. And it won't be moving the way a human aesthetically pleases to have it move. Instead, it's going to move the way a computer determines is the most optimal usage of energy and space and all the rest of it. So it's very interesting, isn't it? Like those changes, definitely. Yeah, right. Okay, so you're talking about the hyperdrive. Do you think that's possible back to Spaceballs, this idea of ludicrous speed? Yeah, well, it'd be interesting because what would it look like if you're inside one of these bubbles? When you scrunch space up in front of you, would you get an equivalent stretching out of stars shape? Or would you get a shifting? Would you be able to see through this bubble? I mean, this is a good question to think about. Maybe we need to come back to in the future. Who came up with that for Hollywood of stars stretching? Hyperspeed, because it's in Star Trek. In Star Wars, and other films have used it, right? So we need to backtrack and see, when did that begin, and did someone come up with that? Who was the person that came up? Was that actually scientifically based, or is that just someone going, this would look cool? Because I do know on a lot of, I'm talking more 90 films, we've done it. Demolition Man is a good example. iRobot, they quite often employ a person they call them a futurist. Yes. And they kind of so you've got the script and you've got the props and blah, 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 but they hire these people to kind of say, oh, but, in this future, phones would look like this, or the fashion might be like this, or the cars would be to kind of logically set a time and place. So I wonder if someone came up with that, or was it just a real simple decision? Yeah. Someone we can do this effect. It looks good. Yeah, it looks cool. Because I know there are looks like stars flashing before your eyes. There are plenty of movie effects which do just come from a special effects person saying, well, I figured out how to do this special effect. And it looks cool. In fact, what's his name? No one's seen it before. Clive Barker. He wrote a film script based all around the fact that his movie props guy came up to him and said, I figured out a way to turn someone inside out through their anus. Which, is horrifying because he's a horror director. And so Clive Barker went, ooh, I could use that. And he wrote a film around it. He already had some ideas of a film. But when he heard that was the inspiring bit. We can do that? Just went, oh, I know exactly how this has to be used. So that was just like a special effect that turned into whatever. And, I'm wondering, I do know there are other films out there where they went, well, we could make dinosaurs look pretty realistic with computer graphics these days. Oh, let's make a dinosaur film then. Yeah, well, that's what Spielberg did with Jurassic Park, right? So, Which came first? Hyperspeed or the effect? I know, it's a good question. All right, well, that kind of brings us to the end of Spaceballs for our Space Brains episode. Let us know what you thought about what we thought about Spaceballs. Do you agree that it's a movie that you're sort of watching, and as you talk about it more and more, you start realising there are some really funny bits, and And actually, as I said, came back as an adult and I watched it and it was like, actually, this is really well done. Like, it's as I said, on the surface you go, it's a crap movie. Like it's just really bad. Like, but when you watch it, you realize, actually, this is a really well-made movie to look like this. He's
crafted
it to be just like this. This is not through sloppy work or being a bad writer or a bad director. This is actually from being a good writer and a good director.
Yeah.
It's like when actors act like they can't sing very well.
Yeah.
You know they do, because all the actors have done their freaking singing training dancing training and all the rest of it. They're all triple threats. But they pretend like they can't. You have to be very good at pretending to be able to sing bad.
It's harder to pretend that you're not good versus you are good.
So what's our next episode?
Alligator. It's another 80s movie.
Who wrote this one? Do we know him?
Came out in 1980. We do know him. John Sayles, the brother from another planet.
Yes.
He didn't direct this one, whereas he directed that. Louis Teague directed Alligator. It's about a baby alligator flushed down the sewer and then survives off rats that have been, like, chemically altered by a science lab or something like that.
To make huge.
I did watch this film many, many moons ago, but I'm really excited to watch it with this kind of closer eye to it.
I saw this back in the 80s. It would have been one of those 7 movies for $7 for 7 days. You know, and we just kind of... And I remember at the time thinking, because I love monsters eating people.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is about that. It's just
cool.
It's something speaks to me about people being eaten.
So check us out. Let us know. Reach out. Tell us what we're doing right with Spaceballs, and what you thought about Spaceballs. You can hit us up on Gravity Undone. You can find us on social media, Facebook sites, Instagram, Twitter. Just look for Space Brains Podcast. Just Google Space Brains Podcast and you will find us. And until next time,
bye.
See ya.
May the Schwartz be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you.